Hi everybody, this is T. Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we will be continuing our discussion about breathing. In specific, we are trying to figure out whether or not breathing patterns exist in certain places on the change grid. So if I'm experiencing a particular place on the change grid, is there a breathing pattern that can be described in that general area? Or if I duplicate a breathing pattern, can I move to whatever area of the change grid that would be associated with that? So we're trying to look at this from two different perspectives. Is it a way of describing some other layer of information around areas on the change grid, or is this something that can be used as a change grid maneuver? I suspect the answer is going to be yes to both of those. Now, following our last discussion, we started scooting a few things into the diagram, got a bunch more to do, but I got a call from one of our colleagues who said, you know, one way to really better understand breathing patterns on the change grid is to recognize the postures that are associated with each area of the change grid, because posture greatly impacts breathing. And I thought, now that is something that we could find very useful. So as we work our way through this, let's start to integrate that idea about the postures that we find on the change grid as well. So, for example, just to get you guys all involved, how would you describe the physical postures of apathy?
More slumped.
All right, so, okay, I heard slumped. Kathy, you go ahead.
Great.
Potato lying, so flung back on the sofa with your arm over it.
Right, so they're relaxed, thrown back. Jim, what did you say?
I said slumped.
Okay, right, slumped over. Ellen, Edie, David?
Relaxed.
Great.
Relaxed, I would say.
Really? Okay, and so if you were to adopt one of those postures associated with apathy, and so I kind of feel like shoulders would be, what? Describe shoulder positions.
Slumped.
So slumped over, and would my rib cage be opening up or collapsing in?
Collapsing in.
Collapsing in. Would my arms be going towards the midline or away from the midline? Towards the midline. What do you think is happening to the position of my head? Am I holding it upright? Is it forward? Where is my head position?
Probably off to one side or forward a little
Or
bit.
forward. And so what does that do to the distance between my chin and my chest?
Shrinks it.
So shrinks it considerably. And so if you were to physically adopt this posture, would you be surprised to find out that your breathing is going to be shallow?
Nope.
No. Now, do you think your breathing would be more abdominal or more chest or in between? What would you guess? And again, to help you actually adopt this position as we're describing all this. So what do you think happens here?
Chest breathing.
So now why would I be breathing a bit faster? Okay, a couple of you are doctors. Why would I be breathing a little bit faster perhaps? How about because, can my lungs expand very much in this position?
Maybe shallower breathing.
Yeah. So the question then with the one up right now is slow breathing or fast breathing? Well, I would say too that overall, I think the breathing would be a bit on the slower side of things.
Yeah.
Now, I would say to you that if we move in grid, I'm going to change that slow to fast. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but here goes. So shallow and slow breathing. What do you think? More abdominal breathing or more chest breathing?
Where are you, T? Are you?
I'm at the bottom. I'm at the down in apathy. I'm actually in a body position like I've just described. So
Chest breathing, because you can't reach your abdomen.
yeah, what do you guys think? You're experiencing the same thing? Is it more abdominal? What's moving? Is your chest moving? Is your abdomen moving?
Abdomen. Abdomen.
my abdomen is moving.
Huh.
Very little movement in my chest because my rib cage is all constrained. There's not any opportunity for expansion. And Brian, you're the physician, so you could explain this better than I can. but
So
I can't breathe well abdominally either.
Right. So you explain it. That's what's called in osteopathic medicine. They call it structure function integration. So the body posture slumped over, you're minimizing and shrinking your capacity to breathe from the chest. And so automatically, and since it's connected to autonomic nervous system, the stomach will take over. So you're going to be breathing from the abdomen most likely in that position. So think about like the fetal position. You see babies breathing, their stomach going up, down. You don't typically see the chest.
Right.
Okay.
And so the expansion of the lungs is because the lungs are being pulled down
Right.
as opposed to expanding in the rib cage. You guys can imagine that from an amount of energy required to expand the rib cage takes a lot more muscular energy than just letting the abdomen relax, which is an automatic inhale, and then it contracts a little bit for the exhale. Yeah. Wait, no, it's the other way around. No, when I relax, I breathe in.
Yes.
Yeah, because of the movement of the diaphragm. Okay, now let's see. Tom's talking about Alexander technique, downward pull. Do tell.
Yeah, so Alexander taught actors, and he called down, here's what he defined downward pull. If we are meant to be effortlessly upright, why do so many of us experience effort in being upright? Because we interfere with the intrinsic sources of balance and support. We impose a pattern of tension throughout the body that comprises the primary control. And he called that pattern downward pull. And he said that tensing in the neck distorts the rest of the relationship of bone to bone in the skeletal system, impairing the skeleton's ability to deliver weight efficiently. So he had exercises to balance the head on the neck. And I think Ellen mentioned shoulders. When I do a process, I go through the center of the body, and then I always say, and they smile, and I didn't even tell you to tense up your shoulders, and you did, because our shoulders think that their job is to hold up the head when we're tense and when we're stressed. And of course, the shoulders don't hold up the head. It just causes more tension to congeal. And so you don't tell people to relax the shoulders. You have them relax up the center, and then you smile and say, notice your shoulders. And they laugh because they go, oh yeah, I was bunching up there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting, very interesting. Yeah, we have some associates who are certified in Feldenkrais. And Feldenkrais is also one of these movement awareness programs, and they too are talking about how movement affects that. I think Feldenkrais primarily worked with dancers.
And so the same idea that you're onto with breathing is it's about the law of reversibility. So that if tension causes your body to do certain things, I wonder if you reverse it by doing certain things. And it's the same as what we're talking about with breathing, that there's a reciprocal relationship, but we usually focus on when they're not the way we want it to be. And then we try to directly say, well, breathe more deeply. Well, we don't know how to breathe more deeply when we're in that state of tension. So in Aikido, they say, find your feet, even though it's anatomically incorrect. And then they say, become aware of your feet and breathe into your feet. And then it starts to happen, because when we're tense, we become walking heads with scrunched. And then when people say, well, breathe deeply, it's good advice, but we hyperventilate. We can't breathe deeply because we've disconnected from part of our body.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Now, how is it that you are so familiar with the Alexander technique?
I did some work on executive presence with an Alexander technique dancer. She actually came from a dancing
Interesting.
background. And she taught me to embody what I was experiencing. And at first you just notice it, almost like any of these things, rather than go right to changing it. Because when you change it, you're dealing at very surface level.
And so
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, Jane is doing something with embodied leadership, and they're doing something similar to that, where they're really teaching the leaders how to feel what it is that you're experiencing. And I think that's the missing component when we're talking about breathing. It's such a conscious thing, because, you know, all the years I've been in martial arts, I just had to figure out, and I'm still figuring out these things as I go. Like, I'm just not conscious enough of it all the time. And it does impact your capacity to actually fully engage in whatever activity you're engaged in.
Yeah, so these topics, starting with the neurotransmitters to the breathing to the embodiment, they're all related in that the body
Absolutely.
has a way. Being reactive is good when there's a tiger or something. Reactive, muscles tense and away you go. But then we forget to shut the valve.
Right.
And
Exactly.
we carry that around, and then our system is not designed for continuously being in that state.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's why it requires that sense of consciousness. And I think this is the secret sauce that I think that's missing for today's hyper culture, where everything's coming at you. So you have all this stimulus coming at you almost instantaneously, and people don't have what I call a strong recovery process.
Or none.
Right.
Or
exactly.
none, exactly.
Right.
Mm.
Well, in fact, if you just do a Google search on breathing, they're all talking about the exact same thing. It's how to get yourself to the center. It's all yoga, breathing sorts of things, meditative breathing, whatever variation. So you go like, why is there suddenly all of this attention being placed on breathing in a way that brings you to a centered spot? Well, it can only be because nobody's there. So everyone's trying to get there. So I think that's an interesting thing too. Now, you guys brought up leadership. So let's go ahead to the outgrid side of things and tell me, what would the postures you would associate with confidence? So,
Well, what was the one that Jordan Peterson said, you know, about basic posture? I forget exactly how it was, but Ellen described it. So it's not rigid like military, and it's not schlumped.
right.
It's solid and strong, but also agile. So if you're too far out grid, then it's forward leaning and pushing.
Yes.
If you're too far in grid, it's kind of whatever. And
Yep.
so it's that alert, strong, but not rigid, not military, like the hands behind the back kind of thing.
So it's straight up and down. It's hips over ankles, you know, shoulders over hips.
Yeah.
Relaxed shoulders, as you were saying, Tom, you know.
And balanced head, not too far forward, not too
That's
far
right.
back.
Balanced head. And also the ability to walk by moving bilaterally, moving your arms freely as you walk, as opposed to holding your arms or holding your torso. It's allowing your torso to move freely as you walk and have bilateral movement.
Mm-hmm. And so, if we think about this, what does the posture you've just described create as possibilities for breathing? So why would that stance allow us to feel confident, and or why did the confidence create that stance, and what's going on the breathing side of things? So you guys talk a little bit about the breathing element.
You're using your whole system to breathe. You're breathing into your abdomen as well as your chest, so that you're moving the breath through, you know, your torso.
And I would add the feet. That changed my life forever when that Aikido guy said, find your feet. And I realized when I'm preparing for a class, it's almost as though I don't have feet or hands. I'm all up in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not in the danger zone, but it's out grid. And it's this ability. And if you're practicing, you should pivot your head slightly to the left, slightly to the right, slightly forward, slightly back, and then let it rest. And the same thing with your hips. do a little bit of pivoting so that you remind yourself, if you do have to flee, you can. If you do have, so you haven't, you've got options. You're agile, but strong.
Yeah.
And so how would you characterize, again, you're simply in a confident state.
Yes.
How would you describe the speed, the depth of breathing? What would you expect?
Deliberate and intentional is what you have up there. I wouldn't change it.
Right,
Yeah.
and so, but the depth would that be very deep breathing? In fact, let's just put this in here now.
Breath.
Where did
Full
where, what's that?
Full.
Full,
Meaning,
good word.
let the diaphragm, it'll just breathe fully and deliberately so that the oxygen can go head to toe and be available.
That's right.
But not like the deep breathing you do when you're really tense and you're trying to slow down. It's just intentional. It's not strained, not fast, not slow. I forget I have breath too when I get tense. I forget I have.
Well, in fact, there are quite a few articles about professional presenters and the struggle they have with breathing. This idea that when you are up on stage and you're talking fast and you're very upgrid because you're animated and excited, you're not, stressed out because you're afraid or anything like that, but you don't have a lot of time to take thorough breaths. And so you end up becoming very much a chest breather.
And you have time, but you don't remember.
Right. And so
it's not a time issue. It takes no more time. And it's like singers and I'm not a singer, I won't ever punish you with that. But they say sometimes when they get excited, even though they're trained and they know that you have to sing from the diaphragm, or that you oxygenate from the diaphragm, when they forget it, they lose their voice. And these are experienced singers. So it's the same thing with experienced speakers. They just forget.
They forget. Well, I remember I had one, I think I was in Sweden, and someone was talking about getting prepped. How do you get yourself mentally and physically prepped for going up to speak? And one of the things that this other speaker shared was that he was told to always relax your abdomen and keep it relaxed for the whole talk. Because if you keep your abdomen in this kind of relaxed sort of state, you are more likely to breathe abdominally. And that's what you're trying to do, get bigger breaths and deeper breaths. And I thought that's pretty useful. So let that belly hang over that belt.
It's about checking in. Check in with your abdomen. Check in with your feet and your hands.
Yes.
And we forget. And then we're just pushing out the stuff fast. And we don't even know we're breathing shallow.
Right. Now, how about speed? Would you think that the speed is going to be, I could just put down normal. because to me,
but normal isn't normal. So you're right. It's what we want to be normal. So whatever not too fast and not too slow means.
Moderate. So you can
controlled.
Do it.
Controlled, if we could say controlled without it being a conscious thing.
Right.
Then I think you're exactly right.
You facilitate
automate it, don't we? Automate control.
Right.
At the right setting. That's what you teach.
Yep. Well, so I think we could continue to describe that in some details, but I'm curious to know how things change if we move further out grid now. So now there might not be so much, there's a bit of a perceived threat because challenge would be going up, but you also believe you have the ability to meet it. Nevertheless, you're in the outgrid danger zone. How might your posture change when you're that far outgrid, and how in turn might that impact your breathing?
Well, Tom said earlier when you talked about leading with your head.
Yeah, I just did it, T.
Yeah, you did.
If I really wanted to persuade you of something, I leaned forward and I noticed my big gut cut off my breathing. I just did it. And it worked right then. I've just got to get this information out there. And I lean forward and then it becomes shallow, fast, just like you said.
Shallow and fast. Now, there's another little dimension I'll throw in here. And that has to do with variability. How regular, how variable is the breathing, steady or sporadic? I found two different dimensions here. Not entirely sure if they are distinct or if they're just someone else's variation on the same concept. But when you are that far out grid, is your breathing regular or variable? Steady or sporadic? How might you characterize frequency of breathing?
I think you're more like snorting.
Well, I
Okay.
think that's more upgrid, the snorting.
Snorting is
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't even have snorting, but let's go ahead and add that.
But I knew exactly what she meant by that. You're really not, you know.
Yeah. Now, snorting. No, snorting.
I like snorting.
Snorting. Well, one thing that I did read was talking about, oh, down here it is, puffing and blowing.
Yeah.
So that the person who's out grid might be huffing and puffing, you know. So they'll go off on this like spew of words and then have to inhale to kind of get ready for the next barrage of whatever.
So the variability is because they run out of oxygen.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They're
They
variable.
don't intentionally vary it. It's just that they go.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you know, to put ourselves in that position, I go like, all right, if I'm in the outgrid danger zone, my posture becomes much more rigid. I was upright when I was confident. Now I'm upright, but maybe in more of a defensive sort of a posture. So there's more guarding behavior. I think there's going to be more muscular tension that I'd be experiencing compared to being confident because a fight could happen at any moment or whatever. I'm getting ready. I'm being threatening really if I'm in the outgrid danger zone. I'm more threatening than threatened. So yeah, chest or abdominal, what do you think as you move that far out grid?
Chest and
Yeah, chest
Yeah.
probably starts
Going
with the chest. It may
Yeah,
end
it's
up in abdominal, depending on how they do with this fight, perceived fight.
Right.
Because the variability in that instant is going to be forced. So they're not really utilizing the breath in the most efficient way. And
Yeah,
so when you're in that state, and that's that huff and puff, you know, kind of thing is forcing you, because the body has smart design. And so it knows to shut itself down, even if you're not willing to do it. That's why you see people falling asleep at the wheel and all different kinds of things. It does the same thing with breath, because breath is the ultimate body's reset button.
Okay, because that'll restore us to any sense
Oh,
of
I love
balance.
that line, Brian.
Absolutely. Because think about it, when something happens to like your mobile phone, right? And you call your provider up and they say, okay, let's start with what they call a soft reset. So they say, turn the phone off, wait 15 seconds, turn it back on. That's precisely what breath does to the body. But we don't understand this idea of a soft reset. And so if we're not conscious of it, then we can't work with it, and certainly, you know, in our favor. So we never understand breath as we're engaged in any activity, even if you're just sitting at the computer doing some work. You should be conscious of the breath. Like say, I learned breath in martial arts to strike. But like I said, when Kathy taught me the breath, and you're holding it in for 3 seconds, and then you're blowing it out slowly, that's different than what I learned. And so I don't know if I have a weak system or something, but like I said, it put me to sleep, and it really brings.
Brian, and I keep meaning to call you and say that doesn't happen to people I know. And I'm concerned that you go into hibernation when you use my breathing pattern.
Well, no, it could be just me because it's not the pattern that I'm used to. But even like when I taught it to the physician groups and they go into the stairwell and they're on the, you know, they're still on the front lines. And so there's like, it brings them way down to a point where they need to be from like, you know, an emergency. Right.
Well,
But
and
it
that could be evidence of whatever their underlying level of exhaustion is.
Exactly.
So yeah, you give them any escape from that exhaustion, and who knows how quickly their body is going to say it's time to heal.
Well, I must say to you, if you're in exhaustion, you are the most vibrant, exhausted person I ever met.
I know.
Well, that's what even I'm looking at it right now, and I'm going like, okay, well, my pulse rate is rather low. and which is strange for me, but it says that I'm exhausted.
I
So
will
if I
take an
Doesn't make any
exhaustive tea
sense to me.
anytime.
Well, that's what I'm going like, this is why it's almost like one of the pieces of feedback I'd like to give Alfred is that perhaps for the first few days of wearing this, you shouldn't be able to even see the screen.
Oh, that's
Because,
interesting.
you know,
Because it
just,
affects the way that you're responding now.
well, right, because now I'm judging it. How is that affecting my pulse rate? So instead of just going like, look, no, we need to have 72 hours worth of data before we're going to give you any element of feedback. So whatever, but a different topic for a different day.
Yeah, I
So
didn't mean to go there.
no, it's all good. But you guys are talking about something I think is very important for us to do. So two things came up as you were having this share. Number one is if we can actually use characteristics of breathing to identify specific locations on the change grid, you must be able to use that information for that purpose in the absence of all other information. So if all you could do is hear a person breathe, would you be able to have some understanding of where that might put them on the change grid? Maybe it's just a general vicinity. So I would say to you that if I heard the recording of someone sleeping, I would know just by hearing their breathing that they were sleeping.
Mhm.
Would you guys agree with that?
If they're
Yeah.
snoring,
Yes.
If they're snoring or there's just that kind of,
yeah.
Yes.
that little pattern.
I think
Yeah.
only in the center.
Now the center was the other thing I wanted to bring up, because if I said to you, when we're talking about breathing deeply, the breathing that we do, the deep breathing that we do when it is an active process may be very different than the deep passive breathing that we might encounter.
So it would be Tai Chi versus just straight meditation, maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
right, but I'm going like, I wonder if there is just a natural place. What did I just do? I'm doing two things at once, right brain, left brain. I want to know, is there some place on the change grid where we passively breathe deeply?
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll work our way around it and see where that ends up. But I know this, that
Passively meaning you're not intentionally doing it. It's
you're
just
not
happening.
intentionally, it's being a
So it
passive,
wouldn't
because we
be
talk about,
meditation because you're following the breath.
absolutely. See, breathing
it.
can either be something that is very active or very passive.
So
And when
T, where would relief be on the change grid?
relief, like if I'm breathing that sigh of relief, that's most definitely a down-grid maneuver.
Because I'm
Oh,
just
that's a
thinking
great question.
that would be an unconscious deep breath.
That's a great
Oh,
question.
that's right, because the sighing or it begins with a deep inhalation,
Yeah.
followed
And
by
you know
this
you're gonna do it.
cleansing.
You're right. You just
Right,
go, oh.
right. So maybe we'll put these up here for now. All this is subject to move without notice.
I think that's right.
Yeah, that feels very right to me, because as a result of whatever that upgrid breathing rate or breathing characteristics were, I got to believe there ends up becoming, again, I'm not a doctor, but a buildup of carbon dioxide that needs to just be expelled to make room for better oxygen. And so that's why the body is saying like, oh, you don't need to consciously, deliberately, intentionally choose to
The body
empty.
knows to
Your
sigh
body's
it.
kind of going like, this is not right. Get rid of all this.
Yeah, it's called physiological dead space. So like the volume of inspired air that does not participate in any gas exchange. And so it needs to find a place to escape, so to speak. And so again, the body has all these smart designs that it's going to do what it needs to do, even if you're not participating in it consciously.
And so that to me feels like a spot of deep passive breathing.
And
So
I
you
believe
have that
down grid,
upgrid?
but I think
You
it's
have that
Well,
upgrade?
I don't know. See, I think what I'm trying to do is I believe that sighing is a down-grid maneuver. I don't think it's about identifying placement on the change grid. I just think that this is a change grid maneuver.
Right, because if you just had a really long, hard day and you finally sit down at the end of the day, it's almost automatic to go, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'll
Or you
put those in
finish a
red
test.
so we know that's a maneuver.
Yeah, you finish a test or something and you get
finish
to
a
the end of
task.
the day.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, we also do this, although now it's going to be more deliberate or more active. If we have someone who's too far upgrade, we say, you just need to take some deep cleansing breaths.
Yeah.
Well, that's a maneuver as
Yeah.
opposed
And
to
they
that's
sound like
happening
sighs,
someplace.
too.
That's exactly what you're trying to do with the meditation breath, is take somebody from upgrid, down into the center. So yeah, that makes sense.
Now, perhaps we would say that sighing also occurs naturally more downgrid. Because it is abdominal breathing, it is shallow, it is slow. Even if I'm sleeping, do I occasionally take a really deep breath? Now I'm passive again, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would think I do. Once in a while, sooner or later, you got to clear, you got to cleanse. Yeah.
Except the sigh as a downgrid maneuver is not shallow and slow, but it's moving you down there. At that
Right.
moment, the release, it's high.
And so,
But-
yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I'm sorry, but then it makes sense that it would naturally be in a downgrid home.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
because it's a downgrid maneuver.
it would lead you there.
Yeah. Have you guys ever known someone or been in a situation where you became very aware of how the person not too far from you was breathing, and their
Yeah.
breathing pattern was driving you crazy?
Yes.
And you just wanted to go like, what's going on? And so these people that go like, but I just remember one time I heard this person constantly going, and I didn't know if they were having some sort of true respiratory problem or if they were telling me an emotional story. I don't know how conscious they would have been about it, but I just kind of felt like they were constantly trying to release whatever it is that was building up.
Mhm.
So how about you guys? What times, when have you noticed people's breathing and when like there is meaning in that breathing?
When they're nervous,
And so how would you describe the breathing pattern you detected when they were nervous?
it would be shallow.
Yep,
And
shallow.
so it wants to be outgrid, but their words are coming slowly. So it's cognitive dissonance because they know exactly what they want to push out, but they're nervous and hesitant. So there's a tension between where they want to be on the change grid and where they are.
Right, exactly. And so I've just moved hyperventilating and gasping.
Even though they've given it some thought, they really want to tell me something. And now they're fidgeting with their hands and they're very short, shallow, and they just can't spit it out.
Yep.
Like constipation of the soul.
Good, perfect. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining in. We shall pick up on Thursday.
Great, thank you.
Alrighty, bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.